I'm Brian Christner, and this is The Byte, a bite-sized podcast about containers, cloud, and tech.
Welcome back to The Byte, episode number 65. In this episode, we're going to talk about the brand new Grafana 7.0. Tons of new changes, UI, improvements across the board. I'm really impressed, I must say. I'm a Grafana user for a very long time, and this version has really blown me away, I must admit. It's been a pretty crazy week. I missed a podcast last week, so apologies. But to say, I was actually preparing for DockerCon. So I was recording videos, playing with all these OBS stuff and audio editing and all sorts of stuff. So that's done out of the way. So this Thursday, DockerCon, catch my session. It's going to be about become a Docker power user using Visual Studio Code. I hope you check it out. If not, check out DockerCon generally because it's going to be full of great stuff. A lot of great speakers, captains, industry experts, just across the board. And it's going to be all online for free. Something like 50,000 people have registered. And it'll be a great time. I hope everybody joins. All right, well, let's quickly take a look at Grafana 7.0. So Grafana, what's new in 7.0? There's a ton of new features. If we go through the list, we'll be here all day. But let me just pull up my notes. So first off, you see there's a new UI, and the UI has been adjusted. So let's just actually jump into Grafana quickly. So you can see, here's Grafana, and let's just go to the home page. You can see there's new tutorials to get started. It helps you get started with your first data source, creating your first dashboard. And I created a test dashboard just to get started to show everyone. And what I did, I used the same query and basically used different visualizations for the same query. And I have a standard graph here. And in this standard graph, you can actually see I'm querying traffic. So the number of service requests from traffic that have code 200, so a successful code. And it actually breaks down, is it a delete, a get, a post, a put, and it breaks it down into this standard graph. Now, I also created an alert off this, so you can see if it goes above 91 threshold, so 91, requests, then it'll actually send an alert. So that was quite easy. I can drag it up and down accordingly, and it adjusts the alert. That's been there for a while, but it was just much easier to use in this version. Let's go back to the dashboard now. So that's the standard dashboard, standard graph. And this query is just traffic service request total code 200. And I didn't change the query at all. I basically duplicated this panel into heat map. So now I use the same exact query, and now I have the heat map as well. Now previously you had to adjust it a little bit for each different visualization. Grafana 7.0, there's some magic in the back end. So this is actually just working out of the box when you change visualizations using the same query. Also for bar gauge, you can see it's quite nice visualization. It has the gradient where it goes from green to red, and it's a nice transition. And if I go into this quickly, it's the same query once again, but it automatically breaks out the bar gauge per metric. So you can see the bar gauge is showing each method, so delete, get, post, and shows them differently within the bar gauge automatically, which is quite cool because previously you always had to define each graph and how it's going to be displayed. And like I said, Grafana just figured it out and does it. Additionally, you can see the table. So table has a really nice feature in 7.0. I didn't go into full detail with it, so I'm still playing with 7.0 myself, but I find it super easy to get started. I had a pie chart plugin already started, so I just put it in there just to show. And then I'm going to show you quickly bar gauge. I'm going to duplicate the bar gauge quickly. So it's the same query. I'm going to edit this bar gauge, and I'm going to change the visualization to gauge. Save it. Yep, go back, and now I have bar gauges. And again, this is a single stat, so I didn't have to change the query at all. Previously, I'd have to rewrite the query to actually show you a single stat for this particular visualization. Additionally, it has multiple statistics in there. So it has a service request for the different methods, and it shows you a bar gauge per method automatically. This is really some magic happening in the back end, and I'm really, really impressed with this, how it's working out. What additionally I really like is you can actually go into one of the panels. You can click on the panel and inspect data. And now you can actually see the data that's actually being created by the panel, and you can download it as a CSV. How cool is that? I mean, now we can actually export the data and further analyze what's going on with alerts or certain monitoring metrics. And I find that super helpful. So that's quite new as well. I didn't enable Loki, but Loki is the logging that's available within Grafana, and I'll cover that in a separate session because I think there's just too much content for just covering that in this particular episode. Additionally, they have new visualizations for like tracing. So if you want to do like tracing with Zipkin or the different tracing tools out there, it has special visualizations for that, and I'll do a separate episode on that so we can kind of cover that in more detail. Transformations and field override. So if I open up the panel again, you can see transformations down here. Let's see, transform, and then you have the different transforms. I can reduce, filter by name, filter by query. I haven't played with it, to be honest. I still need to play with it. It's in beta still, but from my understanding, it looks really cool. So you can add additional queries and calculations on top of your graphs. Then field override, you can also override certain labels, etc. So, I mean, there are just really some great tools that I found in 7.0. Additionally, if you go to plugins, you can see there's new plugin interface, and you can see, basically everything is in core now. So Cloudwatch is now part of core Grafana 7.0. It is the most popular cloud provider plugin, so they decided to just wrap it in as a core plugin. You can see there's other plugins as well. So for example, Alert List, Azure Monitor, Bar Gauge, Cloudwatch Dashboard. I mean, it's the typical plugins. Then we also have Jaeger, Loki, Microsoft SQL Server is now part of it as well. So MySQL. So there's quite a few new data sources available as default. So we don't have to mess around with installing new plugins. And also, Grafana announced that the plugin platform itself is actually easier to write plugins. So it should even help the community write additional plugins. In the enterprise version, I understand you can see statistics about your users, how many logins, what kind of queries. So there's a lot of information in here. And if I jump in alerts, you can see I have an alert set up here, and it actually shows you when it was running, if I show you the right time. So you can see I set my threshold at 138. So I didn't have to change anything dramatically in my setup. So I have a standard Docker Compose setup that I'm using with Docker Stack or Docker Swarm. I just upgraded the tag to 7.0 and redeployed, and it worked. Now I'm gonna have to readjust the dashboards now because to take advantage of all these visualizations, but I'm gonna test how it's gonna work with some of my production projects as well as other projects, migrating from the current version I'm running to 7.0 and see how that works, and if I have to rewrite any of the dashboards, which I imagine I do, because typically when you move versions, you have to adjust your dashboards. Would I recommend moving to 7.0? Absolutely. I am really blown away with it just by my first example of writing a single query and it works across the multiple visualizations. Works really well. I found a couple bugs already, to be honest, but I think I would get over it very quickly, and I think they'll be ironed out quite soon. For example, the bar gauge, I notice when you move away from it and come back, it sometimes gives you error messages. I need to dig into it a bit further. I don't know if it's my query or actually Grafana, so I don't want to point the finger at Grafana yet, but generally I am very happy with the platform, and I'm looking forward to upgrading my Grafana servers around the world. That's all for this episode. Like I said, Thursday, May 28th, DockerCon Live 2020. Check it out. Additionally, on Thursday, we'll be announcing a new episode, and we're interviewing Chuck Gaiman, and it's a whole interview about, source control and Preforce and his book, Up and Running, AWS CloudFormation in Action, Manning Publication. So some interesting podcasts in the pipeline, so be sure to check it out. That's all for today. Have a great day. Stay safe, everyone. and see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Byte. You can find the show notes at thebyte.io and follow me on Twitter at I Do My Own Tricks.